Okay, so got it. Okay.
Okay, so we should be live.
Okay, hi everyone who is joining us or just hopping on to join us on our community education series on Facebook Live. We are on Facebook Live today talking about caring for a loved one and what happens if the person who is the caregiver gets sick or gets hurt. What happens next? So just to start us off, the reason that we are doing community education series is that we find a lot of the things that we deal with on a daily basis or we talk to people about in our business, they need more information on these things, or they haven't been experiencing, things that have come up. And so Misty and I felt like it was very important for us to just start a little series that talks about some of the common questions that may come up with our families or things that people just say they just don't know what to do. So it's just our little piece to give back to the community, and we hope that it is going to help someone, at least one person. And that's why that we're doing these. And today we're talking about caring for a loved one. It should be about half hour, 45 minutes that we will be on Facebook Live talking. So feel free to join in with us and, put in the chat if you have any questions while we're talking about what we're talking about. And with that being said, I'll introduce all of us here today. My name is Krista, and I'm the administrator with Relivar Home Care and Alivity Care Advocates. And I'm joined today by Misty Delgado, who is the owner of Relivar and Alivity.
Hi,
and
everybody.
Today we have a really special guest with us today. We're really excited. And that is David Loeffler. We provide some care for his wife, and he's a very special and dear person to us, and he agreed to come on and talk about caring for his loved one today. So hi, David.
Well, happy to be here. Thanks, Krista. Thank you, Misty.
Yeah, absolutely. And Misty, do you want to talk a little bit about our business?
Sure. So Relivar Home Care provides care in the home for folks that might be struggling with maybe a shower or safety, or might need just a little bit help to get them by and keep them in their home. It typically is less expensive to remain in the home, especially, if we don't need 24-hour care. And most people, I think, want to be in their home. It's typically safer, less, connected with other folks and viruses of these days. But, so we provide that private duty arm, and we also provide care management, and that's helping families find solutions, save time, and trying to figure out what to do with their situation, maybe evaluating their current situation. If it's a parent or a loved one, they're not sure what to do, or in some cases, helping them long-term if they don't have any support to help them, whether it's going to the hospital or, taking them to, an appointment. Care management can assist with those patients or clients.
Yeah, care management has really been a big thing, and I think a lot of people don't know about it. And I think that's another reason why we do these, is because there are people out there that can help and be patient advocates, and we're those people. So we want to make sure that we are telling people that this does exist and there is help out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we have David Loeffler, and we're so excited because we were just talking prior to coming on that, David's been a client of ours, his wife, and family for quite a few years. And, initially when we started, David, maybe you could kind of help us a little bit with, what happened for you to kind of decide that maybe you needed home care services.
So my wife was diagnosed. My wife, Sandy, is 77 years old now. About 5 years ago, she was diagnosed with dementia, probable Alzheimer's disease. And I began to see that once her geriatrician told me, don't leave her alone anymore, it became pretty restrictive because I didn't want to take her to a lot of stores, and she was becoming increasingly kind of obsessive and uncomfortable sometimes in some public settings. And then the pandemic hit, and I really didn't know what to do. I wasn't able to leave her at home, but I didn't want to take her to all these different stores, etc. And a friend of ours recommended Relivar. So that's how we got in touch with Misty, and they were able to provide caregiver, and it's been working out pretty well. I found that I really needed the time both to do all the running around that I have to do, and I also needed the time just for myself. I've been so busy that I haven't really had all that much time to myself, and I think that's an important thing that everybody's been stressing to me, that I need to figure out a way to work out the hours that when the caregivers are here, to give myself a little time, for little David time. I haven't really had much of that yet, but it's been good because Sandy needs to see somebody besides just me, and I need to see somebody besides just her. That's kind of how we ended up getting to Relivar. And of course, with the pandemic, things have become more complicated, but that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, how did you come? Because I hear that a lot from family members where they're struggling, like it's my job to care for them 24/7. Like, how did you come to that resolution that it was okay to get some help for yourself, for her, so that you can have me time?
Well, I think the one of the things I realized early on was that there's no guarantees in this world. Something could easily happen to me. Even though I try to keep in good health, that's no guarantee that things won't happen. And I realized we needed another pair of eyes here, as much as possible. And in addition to that, we also needed a long-term care plan. So yeah, basically how I came to the realization that was because I couldn't do it myself, and I realized that early on. And knowing Alzheimer's, I knew that things are not going to get better; they're just going to get worse. And I wanted to have somebody else here in the house, and I wanted Sandy to be comfortable with somebody else in the house besides me. So that's basically why we started the caregivers, and we plan to continue them.
Okay. And I remember when we first met, one of the things that you had, had talked about is your concern about you and if something happens to you, right?
Absolutely. And another component that I ought to add that I'm thinking as we talk. So another complication of the situation, my wife and I have two children. They're grown up, but our adult son has autism, pretty severe autism. And I began to see that I really couldn't keep an eye on my wife and attend to her at the same time that our son, who lives in a group home, at the same time that our son was coming to visit us here. It just was impossible. I couldn't be in two places at the same time. And it was kind of a no-brainer to, on days when our son comes to visit us, to have a caregiver here for my wife. So that's another reason why we reached out to you, Misty.
Right. And so when you have caregivers there, do you feel comfortable enough then, taking a break or going out and refreshing yourself?
Yes, I do. Needless to say, the quality of caregivers varies. We were fortunate for 4 years. You were able to provide a good, steady caregiver for us. Unfortunately, that caregiver decided to move on. We had to go a couple months without one. Now we have another one. It's working out pretty well, but there's an element of trust. And some caregivers are more motivated than other ones, and all we can do is try the best we can. I do give the caregivers a list of suggested activities to do with Sandy. Part of it has to do with how outgoing and how comfortable with themselves the caregivers are with regard to what they do. And part of it has to do with my wife. I mean, my wife just won't allow caregivers to do certain things with her, like help her with toileting or help her with bathing. So every person is different. That's our situation.
Right.
But definitely the caregivers do give me time to, if I want to go out and jog around the block a couple times, or if I need to go and go to the post office or go to Myers, I'm able to do that without any worries now. Yes.
Got it. So what, now that you're you have the care in there and you're able to do some stuff, what is your long-term plans, and how did you come to this? Your long-term plans if something happens to you?
Good question. Okay, so we have, Misty, once you told me about what Olivity, what your other company does, the long-term care planning, as you know, we have a pretty detailed plan that we formulated together with you and we have on file with you. That's subject to review from time to time because possibilities that we thought were pretty likely before the pandemic, in terms of my plan had been if something would happen to me, that we would want to keep my wife here in the house as long as possible with 24/7 care provided by Relivar or by other agencies that you were able to be in connection with. That may not be as likely anymore, simply because since the pandemic hit, it's harder to find people in all sorts of jobs, including it's harder to find caregivers now. But that being said, yeah, we moved ahead with the plan. The plan is we want to keep my wife here as long as possible, as long as it's working, and as long as we think she has a good quality of life here. I should also mention that in a few weeks, we are going to have my wife go to a day program, a few afternoons a week. It's not in place of caregivers, but a few days a week she'll go to a day program in the afternoon in Southfield, and a few days a week we'll have caregivers here. And I think that'll be a good mix because it'll be more stimulating for her than being home every single day.
Right, right. So you've got, today you've got this home care, and then you're looking at, a day program where she'll be in there pretty much. Would that pretty much be like all day long?
So at this point, the schedule would be noon until 4 p.m., probably on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay.
My wife is not a morning person, so it'll be a stretch even to get her to that place by noon, but we're going to give it our best shot.
Okay, and you have to drive her there because I know some adult, day programs pick them up at the house.
Yes, I do. But luckily, so it's at the Jewish Vocational Service Building, the JVS building on Southfield Road, north of 12 Mile. We live in Oak Park, so this is only about a 10-minute ride for us. It's very close. There's another program. It's called the Brown Center, and they also have a Brown Center program out at the Jewish Community Center in West Bloomfield, also on their campus. That's more of a drive for me, so I wasn't so interested in that. But once I realized that they had the program here in Southfield, I said, let's try it. My wife had participated in a very similar day program in the Alzheimer's Association building on Telegraph Road in Southfield for several years, and she really liked it. Unfortunately, they closed down when the pandemic hit, and they don't have any plans to reopen. So
Okay.
I think this will, going forward, I think it'll be a good option for her. So
Yeah. And it have a lot of activities for her when she's there.
absolutely. One of the big bonuses for us is that there's a music therapist who we knew through the Alzheimer's Association Day program. He came once a week, but he comes virtually or nearly every single day to the Brown Center program.
Mhm.
Sandy and I went and looked at the state program last week, and it looks good. I don't see any negatives about going for it, and I think that she'll like it. So I think it should be a nice combination of things to allow Sandy to have more interesting, maybe more quality days than I'm able to provide just with me and the caregiver sitting alone in the house.
Right. And do you feel like when you have a break that you're able to come back with a little bit of fresher of a mindset, maybe?
I do, yeah. Honestly, what I do, at least, so we see our son twice a week when we drive out to see him in his group home in West Bloomfield. But usually one of the days that the caregiver is here with Sandy, typically on a Friday, I also drive out to West Bloomfield and just get some time alone with our son.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I really enjoy that. And on a few occasions, I've actually gone out and taken a nice long walk, and it's like getting a breath of fresh air. I need to do that more often, especially now that the weather is getting nice again. So I'm
Yay.
looking forward. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So
Yes.
yeah.
That 70-degree weather yesterday was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's very nice outside right now too. So I
Yeah.
tell my grass to stop growing so I don't have to cut it, but that's another issue.
Well, that's where we line up resources to help with that too,
Right.
That's right. And eventually I'll end up probably outsourcing that too. There was a guy literally across the street and over one house from us has a lawn cutting service. And at some point I'll be happy to turn it over to him. But
Yeah.
Right.
So it's interesting because one of the reasons that we started care management services is because I don't have any kids. And I see this gap of not having anybody to oversee your care when you get ill.
absolutely.
Whether you're, Sandy, if, you were there or not there, or yourself, or, any individual who's single. And I felt like that it really is the future for helping people do that long-term planning piece, long-term care planning piece. Because if you have folks really that are in the industry, like us, that are able to, come in, assess the situation, give an independent evaluation, and then, help implement and or oversee going forward, I think sometimes that it reduces family disputes for sure. We've seen that consistently.
You're right. I want to mention that you and I were talking before we went live here. In addition to having long-term care plans through Alivity for my wife, you guys also had them for me, because we have kind of a similar situation that even though we have our two adult children, neither one of them is in a situation to take over even my care if something happens to me when I'm alone. And we don't have any family. We don't have any family that can come and help at all. Not even like I have identical twin brother, but he's at the other side of the country. So it's important, no question, even for people that aren't caring for someone, if they don't have family, if they don't have any other contingency plans set up, then I think long-term care plans are obviously indicated, and definitely they're going to be changing over time. That pandemic has changed things, but that's why you and I are in contact every couple of months to see whether we need to revise the long-term care plans, and we've been doing it.
Right, because things do change over time, medications, doctors, people. So the goal would be, if anything were to happen to you at any moment's time, we have current information. We're able to implement the plan and directives that you want to have done, for Sandy, as well as make sure, if let's say you're in the hospital, that you were able to help, oversee and work through that issue to get you well and get you back home,
Right. And actually, two other things that come to mind that you had mentioned to me that I recently implemented in the house. One is a lockbox on the front door with a combination on it. So if something would happen to me, Sandy's not able to pick up the phone, call 911, tell them all of our information and where we live and stuff. So in addition to the lockbox, I've also contracted with Guardian Alarm, and there's a squawk box here in the kitchen, and I'm wearing what looks like a wristwatch, but it just has a button on it, and if I fall down and I'm in the basement and I can't get up, all I have to do is push on the button on my so-called wristwatch. And then the box says, David, are you all right? Do you need help? And if they don't get any response, then not only do they call 911, but they already have all of the pertinent information. So they don't even need a voice telling them, where we live and the combination at the front door. They all have it. They have it all listed. And even people to contact, friends and neighbors to contact, to come over here and on an emergency basis take care of Sandy until you're able to get somebody out here. So that's all part of the plan that we set up over the last couple of months.
Right. And you laid out your main contacts, if anything were to happen, who we contact to implement your plan.
That's right. And I have exactly that same information also posted prominently on the inside of our front door and on our refrigerator. So when emergency medical technician, when EMT folks would come in here, they already would have all that information. So that's the plan.
Right.
We're doing the best we can to try to prevent any catastrophes from happening.
Those are all great things to bring up, because some of those things I would have never even thought of, if I was caring for someone. So it's really good that we bring those up to people's attention, that, it's not just the big things. There's got to be other things in place that, if something happens, that everybody's covered.
Even one more kind of level of planning that I ought to just quickly mention. So a few weeks ago, I also did go and I took a look at a local nursing home, a memory care unit. We're Orthodox Jews, so my interest would be if and when we reach the time when I or the caregivers can no longer adequately care for my wife in the house, then I'd like there to be as smooth a transition as possible to a nursing home. So I went and looked at one, and I already have the paperwork I'm filling out. I'm not going to act on it yet, but I want to have the paperwork on file with them, and I'll keep it updated. So if something would happen, either on an emergency basis or gradually we get to that point, then at least we will have already started the transition. Anyway, so I think that's an important part of long-term planning also. You hope that your loved one never has to go to a nursing home, but I accept the possibility that at some point it may be that my wife's quality of life would be better in a small memory care unit, which the one is that we looked at, as opposed to having people trying to do it all here in the house, depending on my wife's functioning level.
Right. And I remember we talked about that probably now 4 years ago. And
Yes.
I happened to be in one of those facilities and said I wasn't real thrilled with it, but not to worry about it, because management changes, things change, people change. And, if and when she needs that care, they might have a better team running the community at that time. So it wasn't really something to worry about then, but we do evaluate communities all the time.
Yes.
And we'll do full research on them. So I recently had a family that, really liked the brick and mortar of this particular community. But when I went in to do the tour and I did research to find out that they had action against their license in the state of Michigan, and it was kind of serious. In this particular instance, somebody was given insulin that was not insulin dependent.
Okay.
So I always like to say things happen, but to me, it always ends up being more about how did they respond to it? How do they respond to me regarding the issue? Do they understand the severity of it and they've made corrective action? And, I'll usually watch for their response and see how things roll from there. In this particular instance, I recommended to the family they did not put mom in there, because you can have a situation where if you don't find that right community, you're spending more time managing the community and their care inside there than you are on other issues.
In fact, it's interesting that you said that because we have a good friend whose sister is in a memory care unit, and she's doing exactly what you just said. Let's just say that the care that she's receiving, that the care that her sister is receiving, our friend deems as certainly less than optimal by far, and she's spending so much time talking to the staff there. That's not what we want to have happen. So
Right. I think sometimes family members feel that once mom or dad goes into a community that they can kind of wash their hands from it. But I can tell you from our perspective, in that instance, I've had families call us just because they're so exhausted and
Yeah.
not being heard at the community level. And then in this one particular instance, the lady had a bruise on her arm that was clearly from a caregiver mishandling her. So, but they don't know what you can do from that, reporting. You can report them to the state, and I know some people are fearful of that, but again, I always feel like even though you're in a community, you still need somebody supervising the situation and what's happening.
no question. And in fact, the parallels are very, very strong between what you're talking about in a nursing home and also what goes on in group homes. I mean, every single word that you just said is also relevant to our son's situation living in a group home. Constant vigilance or being as vigilant as you can is only for the good. It helps. Yeah. So.
Everyone needs an advocate.
Yeah, I can imagine just by you going there twice a week, things look different.
Yes, and in fact, interesting. One of the staff persons had at our son's house was trying to get something done through the top management, and she said the management wasn't listening to them. But then she turned to me and she said, "David, just give them a call. You have no idea how much power you have with them." Yeah, so I called them. We were trying to get a certain replacement, a certain staff from another home moved in to be the staff, one of the staff for our son's house. I made the phone call, and like 3 days later, that person was transferred in. So
Yay.
yeah, and it's working out well.
Good.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because we see that sometimes as well. Like when our clients go into the hospital, I've had situations where they're in a crisis in the ER, and ER hasn't done anything. When we arrive on the scene, they're like, "Oh, somebody's here now. We've got to deal with this person." So
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we Misty, you and Krista and I have had this conversation many times, but it's important to advocate for your loved ones, regardless of whether they're your parents or your spouse or your children. And sometimes it's all three of them. So that's right.
that sounds like the situation you're in.
Yes.
Yeah, what's the term? Being the sandwich generation? Yeah, something like that. That's right. Yeah. So I mean, with regard to going through the issue with my wife with dementia, it's kind of like Yogi Berra would say, deja vu all over again. Because my mother also had dementia, and we went through this with her. And I saw this with two of my aunts and one of my uncles. But it's different when it's your spouse. It's very different when it's your spouse. In a way, you kind of expect. It's not too surprising if somebody 20 years older or 25 years older than you, by the time they're in their 80s, your parents, and they develop dementia. I think the statistics are 50% or more of people 85 years old have some sort of dementia, but you don't really expect it when it's your spouse. And this happened to me when I was already still just in my mid 60s. Life happens, and we just have to learn to go with it. But it's very helpful to know that there are people like the people in your organization, Misty, that will help you down the road. So
yeah, and thanks for that conversation, because usually, and I have received a call just recently from a gentleman in his 60s. He's like, I'm still working full time. how can I care for her? What needs to happen? Doesn't Medicare pay for this? I mean, what am I supposed to do? And you were dealing with that at that age. I mean, what happened to you?
That's right. Yeah. So I was working full time. Ironically, I had a lab at Beaumont and I was doing Alzheimer research. And Sandy and I were on a trip. We were in Portland, Maine, and Sandy asked me 10 times the same day what street our motel was on. I still remember it was Division Street in Portland, Maine, because I kept saying Division Street over and over again. And this light went on in the back of my mind, and I said, we have a problem here. So I got her evaluated. We got the diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, which within a year it progressed to dementia. And at that point, when the doctor said, "Don't leave her alone," I walked in the lab and I said, "I'm sorry, I've got to close the lab now." Didn't see it coming, but that's you got to deal with whatever life gives you. That's what I did. So.
And so, can you speak a little bit to the financial piece of this?
Good question. Okay, so my wife and I are fortunate that many years ago we decided to take out a long-term care insurance policy, and so this is like a twin study that my twin brother decided not to keep their policy, but Sandy and I decided to keep the policy. Long-term care policies are not cheap. And if you don't need them, then you feel great about not having to spend that money. But if you do need them, they're like their weight in gold. We're very, very fortunate. Our long-term care policy will reimburse us for up to 10 hours a day of caregiving. It will also reimburse us for the costs when Sandy goes to this day program a couple of days a week. I recommend it very strongly. We're very fortunate to have it. It gives us a lot more freedom, a lot more options in terms of caregiving without worrying about the financial piece involved. It's been a good decision that we made to keep it. So.
I have a lot of families ask me, well, doesn't Medicare pay for this? Doesn't my Blue Cross policy pay for this?
You would think so, but it's so. Misty, you could speak to this better than me. If we did not have long-term care insurance, I'm assuming Medicare would probably not cover the cost, would not reimburse the caregivers. Is that true? I don't think it does, but I don't know.
No, I mean, most of the time when we're talking to family members, it's your Blue Cross will only cover if you have a loved one that needs high-level skilled nursing, which means that they're on a vent or a tube feed at home. Most folks aren't in that situation. And Medicare doesn't pay for it at all. They have no reimbursement codes to do this level of care.
That's what I thought. And one of the things I should stress with regard to long-term care policies these are things that if you're already in your 60s, let's say, I don't even know if you can buy long-term care once you're in your 60s. I mean, my wife and I bought them when we were in our 30s. These are typically things these are policies that they're best bought when you're young, even though you're thinking, well, I'm going to stay young forever and I won't need them. But good luck with that. It does take some planning and some foresight to realize that I might need this, and if you have the financial ability to buy a long-term care plan, long-term care insurance plan when you're younger, then it's definitely good insurance. Absolutely. And they also cover, I think, 70% of nursing home costs. That's what I read recently when we looked at this nursing home. So.
Yeah, I think, when you've got somebody in their 60s and they're like, wait a minute, I'm still working and I'm in my best years putting money in my 401k or profit sharing, and now I have to pay out of pocket for care. But what about me? Like, I'm going to spend all my money down on my spouse, and what about me? And, the answer a lot of times is that, yes, you are going to spend down at that point. Yes.
That's right. Now, I did the math a couple years ago. If we didn't have any long-term care insurance, and if we had 24/7 care for Sandy in the house, based upon what were then your current rates, it came out to it was over $100,000 a year that I would have been paying just for caregivers, and
Yeah.
those are so. Penny wise and pound foolish. It's certainly worthwhile if people can. I urge younger people that are looking at this video to think seriously about long-term care insurance. It's definitely worth it as far as from my perspective.
Yeah. So one of the things that you said is that, was it your mom who had dementia?
Yes.
Okay. And then that was quite different than your spouse. Can you expound on that a little bit about what the differences were for you?
Sure. Well, I mean, the obvious difference was this is kind of a superficial difference was that. So my mother lived in Modesto, California, and by the time she developed dementia, we were already living here in Oak Park, Michigan. So I would call my mom every single day, and I could hear her kind of deteriorating, but she would put on the best front possible. And as her situation deteriorated, our conversations became much more limited. I would say, "Hi, Mom, how are you doing?" And instead of really answering the question, she'd say, "I'm fine, how are you?" As if it was one long word, because she really didn't remember what was going on with her. I didn't have any responsibility for my mother. I mean, unless I chose to move out to California, which I couldn't do. It's different when, of course, when it's your spouse and spouses, you're living with your spouse and doing the best you can. So it's a 24/7 job as opposed to picking up the phone every day. What I saw with my grandparents, my grandmother also developed dementia when she was living in Modesto, California. And my parents had her go to a nursing home, but then they didn't really visit her very often. And I remember thinking that was not great. If the time came when we needed to move toward a nursing home for example, for my wife, I would want family members, at least me, if I'm here, to be involved on a daily basis, as opposed to just putting someone in a nursing home and thinking that, well, she'll get good care, I'll show up whenever I can. It's not the best way to go.
No, definitely not. Well, thank you for that. And is there anything else that you feel is important? You're a unique person, you and Sandy, in that you're very forward thinking. And we are seeing more and more folks thinking forward, like the what ifs and planning today for the future. Is there anything else that you think would be important to, tell our visitors or our Facebook Live friends?
I think the main thing is that obviously none of us know what the future is going to bring. And I think most of the folks out there would say, gee, life hadn't turned out the way I thought it was going to turn out. You can't plan for every scenario. And I remember hearing about, with regard to our son, when we finally made the decision to have him move to a group home, that one of my friends said, you don't want to have an oh my God scenario happen. And that's true again with regard to my wife as well. You plan to the extent that you can. You don't know what the future is going to bring, and we can't anticipate every single thing that might happen.
Right. But
having said that, there are a lot of things that can be already put in place that I think a lot of people have not put in place. And that's again, thank Misty in particular. Thank you to you. We do have a lot of those things in place, and moving forward, we're going to continue to do it. So that's all.
It's interesting because every time I go to see my parents, they're down in Florida, and I've created a care management plan for them as well. And we go over it every single time I go down there. Has anything changed? What are you looking for? Do you still, are these your plans? Because things do change over time. My dad does have dementia as well. And so, you know, with my mom, you know, her health is a little precarious. So knowing that that would be a concern, and having plans for my dad if something were to happen to her, because she's that primary caregiver as well. But, you know, I would just say in general to the folks out there on Facebook that if you or someone you love is struggling to try and figure out, you know, first of all, if there is a problem, having a care manager come in and assess the situation and give you clarity on the issue. You know, we help families save time and we help them save money. We know the tricks that you should do, whether it's the lockbox on the front door or the emergency button. We're going to try and, you know, give you those recommendations right up front. And, you know, families, I can tell you, typically when I had an assessment done, even on my own parents, the care managers put 10 things on the list and my parents agreed to do 3 of them. And I was good with that. You know, it's 3 steps forward, you know, so we just take it a step at a time because things do change.
Absolutely. No, everything is a work in progress. And I think, like you're saying, it's important to be flexible, but it's important not to have one's head in the sand. It's important to try to anticipate what the future might bring, and as much as possible, be ready to deal with it. That's what we're trying to do.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. You are
Thank
a
you.
wise man and we appreciate you. And we're so thankful to have you and Sandy as our clients, truly.
Well, thank you for all your help and looking forward to continue to work with you.
And for everybody who is watching, and maybe there was some things that you had questions about that we didn't answer, or more things that you want to talk about, you can contact us. Our information is up on the screen right now. Relivar and Olivia, you can reach us at the same number and you can ask for Misty or myself. And then of course, next month we'll have another community education series. We actually haven't planned what we want to do yet. So if there's something specific that you are looking for learning about, please let us know that as well. And we'd be happy to add that into our series. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.